rewatched this promo bit this morning and wrote down some stuff because I'm not sure if this got a mixed reaction. I think it was more a positive reaction online. Um, People loved the four pillars all being together in the ring. I will say that my like flat like blanket take on this segment is good on paper, not that good in execution. So I'm gonna just break down what each guy said and the positives and the negatives. So we started with Jungle Boy. He is of course coming off the great Buried Alive match with Christian that I loved so much, and I loved his entire feud with Christian. I've talked about it on Twitter. It really resonated with me hard. Anyway, he said that the last time he faced MJF was at the Double or Nothing pay-per-view in 2020. It was a pandemic pay-per-view. There was no crowd, and MJF cheated to win. He then said after that you went on to be handed opportunities. While I wrestled on Dark, you've never wrestled on Dark. You've never been on Elevation or even Rampage. I thought this was a very strange thing to say. Like this idea, very fourth wall breaking of Jungle Boy to point out, I've been wrestling on Dark and Elevation and Rampage, and you've never done that. It just makes, we know that Dark and Elevation are like not even B shows, but like D shows. Rampage has become a B show, despite the assertions that Tony made when it started that this would not happen to it. And I just felt like Jungle Boy flat out buried Rampage there. Like MJF is too good for Rampage. We know he's too good for Rampage. A lot of the roster are. And him just saying that I thought was so bad. And then he also talked about people busting their asses and they might only get 60 seconds on this show while we all have to sit through MJF promos. I don't like stuff like that either. I think that is also quite kayfabe breaking. This idea of like people working so hard for an opportunity on the YouTube shows, but they don't get it on the big show. I don't really know what that means on kayfabe, because really, if they were like winning all their matches, of course they would be elevated, pardon the use of that word, to Dynamite. That just rubbed me the wrong way too. But it was not the worst thing. I have to say that Jungle Boy did a pretty good job here. I really thought he spoke pretty well. He's kind of hit or miss in the promos. He's still learning a lot when it comes to delivery. One thing that he needs to work on is some aspects of his delivery, because he can sometimes come across like a bit of a dick without meaning to be. And I think because like of what the character of Jungle Boy Jack Perry is, he needs to like tone down the dickishness. That's something I see it more pronounced with Action Andretti, who just comes across as a dick no matter what he says, and we're meant to believe, he's a babyface. But anyway, speaking of people that come off like dicks, next up was Sammy Guevara. I would never ever advocate for writers in pro wrestling until watching a promo like this, what Sammy came out with here. I thought this was really bad. He started off saying like careful or I'll turn this rebar mitzvah into recircumcision. That was a good line. I immediately just thought that he was probably given that line by Jericho or someone, because I just don't believe it came out of his brain. Because then the very next thing he says is, you talk too much to MJF, which is so begging to be used in Botchamania so hard, which is Sammy all over. He can never not pander. He is the biggest panderer with how, everything he does in the ring when he's meant to be a heel, all of that. I was just like, okay. Then we got the part that I hated the most. He said that Max talked his way into the door of AEW, but he had to work on the indies for 10 plus years, and he had to work at Whataburger and Subway. Then, when he finally got to AEW, he was told he was only supposed to be the inner circle's job guy and a bump guy for Chris Jericho. And then he said, I'm not like you. I never had the machine pushing me. I had myself. This was hella bad. So firstly, congrats Sammy for working on the indies. That is what most wrestlers do. Then talking about like, I worked at Whataburger, I worked at Subway. We have most of us who haven't grown up in extreme privilege, had to work jobs that weren't ideal to make a living before we fulfilled our dream. Okay, so asking for any extra credit for that, um, uh, I don't like, you don't get any extra credit for that from me, but you certainly don't get it when you're Sammy Guevara saying it. Okay, Sammy may have had this long path in the indies to get to AEW, but I cannot think of someone in AEW who isn't like a top guy, who's been more pampered than Sammy Guevara. Later on, MJF brings up, which he should not have brought up, locker room brawls. And you think about stuff that Sammy's been involved in, whether he was the instigator or not, or whether he was the worst person involved or not. But this guy, I really get the feeling, has a guardian angel and has been pampered and allowed a lot more leniency than other people. So to me, like, he's like the last person that I want to hear say that, they've never had anything done for them, they've done it all alone and it's been such a struggle. I don't buy that from Sammy Guevara whatsoever. And an extra reason of not buying it, if we're going to stay in kayfabe and not talk about any backstage incidents, is the fact that he came into this company in the inner circle. So therefore, in kayfabe, he was paired with Chris Jericho, who was the company's world champion. So him doing this, like, I did it all by myself thing, like, no, you were paired with Chris Jericho, and then you tried to go off on your own. It did not work for you at all, even though you became TNT champion. And now you are back with Chris Jericho, benefiting from being with him so much that you are main eventing this Dynamite. He goes on to say that he was supposed to be the inner circle's job guy. Please tell me what a job guy is, Sammy, in this context. Please. And then that he was also meant to be Jericho's bump guy. Also tell me what that is. This guy is airing like grievances about how no one's helped him, then telling us that he's been paired with Chris Jericho, and then like almost like slagging him off by saying, "Oh, I was just meant to be Jericho's bump guy." That is the guy you're teaming with in the main event, Sammy. Like, I just thought this was so bad, and I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me or whatever on this, but I just thought this was kayfabe breakingly bad, and I would never give him a open mic again without someone going through what he was meant to say. And if someone did script this for him or give him the pointers of this stuff to say, such as inner circles, job guy, and things like that, like, they need to have a think too. And then he threatened us by saying that he'd be world champion one day. Anyway, sorry. I've been sick for so long that maybe I'm just testy. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to being a nice girl. Then Darby, great line. Hold your applause till after I'm done, please. I love that. That was the funniest Darby's ever been. His promo was pretty good. He said he told a story about he was in film school, but he dropped out because they wouldn't let him be Darby Allin, and then that's when he started wrestling school and kind of promised himself that he was either going to make it or fail as Darby Allin. And then he said that he's told Tony that he's never leaving. And then he said the biggest problem with his company is wrestlers whining on Twitter. And you have like MJF doing the bidding war of 2024. And he said if he doesn't get the match, he's not going to whine on Twitter. He's going to hit MJF with a skateboard and give him a headlock takeover, which is a callback to the match they had at Revolution 2022. Darby's promo was pretty good. I have to say, he didn't say too many things that I thought shouldn't have been said. Then MJF brought up the Sammy and his fiance stuff. I think that's fine to bring up because Sammy did propose to his first fiance on TV, so it's kind of like part of canon. And then MJF told us all about his fiance problems himself. Then MJF basically said that all these guys have had veterans helping them accept MJF, and then that he is the only pillar that keeps this place up. So objectively looking at this, if I didn't know too much about the ins and outs of everyone, I think I'd probably come down on the side of MJF because he is right. Sammy has literally been babysat by Chris Jericho since day one. He's been babysat by him so hard that he like was able to walk away from the inner circle and then get a spot in the JAS. That's how much they're tied together. Darby's had Sting, and Jungle Boy did have Christian for a period of time. Um, so I would kind of come on the side of MJF. As for like what I want to see coming out of this, do I want to see a four way? No, four ways suck. Um, I don't think Sammy should have any involvement in this, not just because I don't think he's very good, but I don't think it works in storyline either with him being part of the JS. Jungle Boy, I think storyline wise is the best candidate because he's coming off the Christian thing, and that's really good. However, who I think is the best candidate, like in general, to carry this, I would say is Darby Allin. I think MJF Darby Allin is what I'd like to see coming out of this. But my overall thoughts on the segment, as I said at the beginning, I think it's something that read good on paper, but I don't think was executed well. For some reason, they decided that they wanted to do this four pillars thing on this night. And I'm not sure that it made sense to do it on that night with, Sammy being in the main event and with it kind of just coming out of nowhere. So it was very cool to see the four pillars all together talking to each other, even if I didn't agree with everything that was said. Um, so I will I'm giving it kind of like a B grade on like you really tried for something, and you missed the mark on some points, but like overall enjoyable segment, a memorable segment, and I did like it as much as I did find bits to rip on here in my review.